Well, good afternoon. I guess for some of you, it's still morning out on the West Coast. My name is Mike DiMuccio, and I'm a Nikken Royal Diamond. Happy to be here today. Actually, very grateful to be here today. It's always a pleasure for me to have an opportunity to share the insights that I've gained over the years of being involved not only in the Nikken business and the Nikken family, but the amazing people that I've been introduced to, and the incredible information that has been shared with me over the ages of what feels like ages. I've been in Nikken for almost 26 years now, which is almost hard for me to imagine. I know every time I tell that story, it sounds like, it's a long span of time to be involved in something that you never expected to be involved in the first place, nor did you have an education or a background for. So that just speaks to the magnificence of being able to find that thing that makes you, that thing that makes you feel connected and part of something important and something special. And that's kind of what it feels like to be involved in the Nikken family. I just got back from Mexico City, was able to share this message, not only with the Nikken family in terms of the field leaders, but I was also given an opportunity to have breakfast with the Nikken staff and share some of these insights with them, which was pretty neat to do. So we have a number of sites here, more than I was expecting. Actually, I would just want to give some recognition out there. We've got Dave and Valerie Johnson. I see Valerie online from Post Falls, Idaho. We've got Debbie Davis from Mount Shasta, California. Where are you, Debbie? There you are. We've got Carol Hackbart from Dewar County, Wisconsin. Carol, where are you? Oh, there you are. There you are. And you've got Dee with you, and I guess a few other people there with you as well. We've got Judy Cook from Mulvane, Kansas. Where's Judy? There you are, Judy. We've got Madeline Zwarski from Lorain, Ohio. I see Dr. Stan Bogus. I'm not sure where you're coming in from, but it's probably in the Pennsylvania area somewhere. And a few other people I see who joined in, and I want to welcome you to this presentation that I refer to as the law of attraction. And as you see as we go along, I'm going to sort of lead you in a direction of a new understanding of what this really should be named. And forgive me as I switch around from moving from one screen to another, because I definitely want to get my presentation up on screen. So I'm going to mute whoever is not muted. And I see that's good. I'm going to go ahead and switch now to my PowerPoint presentation, which, by the way, I have to tell you, this is the first time I'm doing this presentation, not live in terms of physically. About two weekends ago, I did this presentation for a young audience. I think the youngest person there was in their late teens, and the eldest was about 23 or 24 years of age. But all told, there was about 20 people who were really anxious to hear this information. It was organized by my nephews, nieces, and children. So I'm happy to pass this information on to the next generation, because I think in their hands, they could really shape a future that's very, very bright and exciting, not only for themselves, but maybe even for the world. You never know what something you may say or share with somebody, that impact and how it can influence the world. This sort of takes me back to a story of our founder, Isamu Masuda, who had been shared some golden rules and some insights about what you think about, what you feel about, and the actions you take as a consequence. And it was prior to his conception of Nikken that he was given this information, and it was through that inspired him to take the step forward to begin the Nikken business, and that was over 42 years ago. So you can imagine the influence that thought process, how it impacted him to create a business, but more so his mother, who gave him insights about a concept called the 5 pillars of health: healthy body, healthy mind, healthy family, healthy society, and healthy finances. And it was those thoughts that she gave to him actually before he went to bed. It's interesting that's the time she was whispering those thoughts into his ear, and he was highly receptive to, because that was the foundation of the philosophy of Nikken. And again, here we are some 42, 43 years later, promoting this concept still by the thousands on 4 continents around the globe. So you never know what you may say or share with somebody that could have an impact, that could transform lives, many lives, thousands of lives. I still have people coming in. I'm going to ask them to mute. Oh, I've just muted them. So I'm just going to, again, see what we've got. Okay. Let me switch back. Here we are. So this presentation is called The Law of Attraction. And as I mentioned earlier, it's probably not the best name for it, as you will see as we get into this, why that is the case. And I just want to give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my PowerPoint. Just give me a thumbs up on your screen. Excellent. Okay. Fantastic. So we'll get through the little bugs as we go along here while I learn to navigate this experience in an online way. I guess we still have some who are not muted. So
Patty Patterson is not muted. And
okay, I'll mute them all. Okay. I think that should do it for the moment. Okay. Well, we're working this out, although a little rough start. But anyway, we are recording this, so hopefully you'll be able to share this information with others as time permits, and as you see the need to find someone to share this information with. I have to tell you, this is the sum total of my background in aerospace engineering, which precedes my life in Nikken. It's carried forward into the interests that I have in the science world. I've sort of kept a pulse on some of the advancements that are being made in the scientific community as far as what their research is revealing about the nature of our reality, this thing we call life and reality. And it's fascinating to say the least, and getting even more interesting and more weird as we learn about the nature of reality. But what's interesting for me, and why I'm going to share this information on this PowerPoint, is it's correlating to some of the theological beliefs and religious beliefs that are held from ages ago. And if we go far enough back, you'll find that they're all pretty much saying the same thing in a different context, in a different light. But what we're seeing now is science is actually confirming a lot of ideas that were once considered miraculous, which I love what my mentor Bob Proctor would say. He would say a miracle is just a word we invented to describe the effects of unknown causes. But once you know the cause, it's not a miracle. It's just simply a fact, or it's a law in action. And I happen to believe that as a scientist background, I think that what we are starting to have a keener understanding of is the laws of nature, or God's modus operandi, if you will. And for instance, gravity is a law, and we know that law very, very well, and we know how to apply that law so that we can create benefits. Things like hydrogeneration, et cetera, are all a product of our understanding of that law. Of course, the more we have an appreciation and understanding of the various laws, the better we can manage and create outcomes that are desirable. So anyway, I started a tour in January of this year called the Active Wellness Tour, and we have satellite sites right now plugged into this presentation. I welcome them all. And again, I hope that this information is something that inspires you to be able to make some proactive steps in your life and take advantage of the opportunity that's being presented to you today. Well, let's talk about this for a second then. You see on the screen a round world and a flat world. And this question may seem a little odd, but which world do you live in? Which of these two images best describe the world you believe you live in? Now, ordinarily, we have a lot of feedback on our live presentations, but I'm going to make the assumptions that I've seen and the reactions that I get from people, which is usually a chuckle. You know, people laugh and it's very obvious we live in a round world, etc. Some people are afraid to answer that question because they think it's a trick question. Well, it's not a trick question. It's just a simple question. Do we live in a round world or a flat world? Well, at one point in time, not that long ago, maybe 500 or so years ago, if I would have asked that question, it would have been very, very obvious then as well. However, what would have been obvious is that people would say, we live in a flat world. You're crazy to even imagine that we live in a round world. I'm going to just get a little bit of your faces on my screen here so I can create a little bit of interaction for myself as we go along. So you would agree that we live today in a round world, and that seems so obvious. And yet, 500 years ago, it was just as obvious that we lived in a flat world. So what changed? Essentially, what changed was what we believe to be true. And the thing is that it was always true. regardless of what we believed. So what we gain from an insight like this is that what we believe to be true, regardless of how popular it may be and how promoted it may be from the authorities and whatnot, it may not be true at all. It's just a reflection of people's belief system. And so why is that important? Well, if you live in a flat world, you're going to operate as if you live in a flat world. Your mind will be limited by the experience of people who think they live in a flat world. You will not conceive of or imagine ideas that are possible or only made possible if in fact you lived in a round world. So let's give you an example. Say sailing a ship around the world. That's something we find fairly common these days, but you would never have imagined doing that if you believed the world was flat. In fact, we may have never discovered other countries if we believed the world was flat. We wouldn't have sent those ships out. And if you think about it, what does that tell us? It tells us that our beliefs control what we imagine possible. And the other thing, the first point that I made, is that our beliefs are not necessarily true. They just are what we believe to be true, even though it may be a very common held belief. And of course, new information may come along, such as satellite images and what other technology exposes the fact that the world is round to us. That might shift or alter our consciousness and therefore our accepted paradigm that the world is in fact round and not flat. And at that point in time, somebody might actually imagine putting a satellite in orbit. And if it wasn't for that, would we have our cellular phone communication, etc.? Think of all the things that have come into our reality as human beings, all the experiences, not only as people, as personal individuals, but as a population, as a people, as a species, because we altered one belief about something that was common to us all. And so this is an incredibly important point. If we consider happiness, health, wealth, the things that most people aspire to have in their life, and after many, many years of trial and error, find themselves falling short. The majority of the population is not happy, not healthy, and certainly not wealthy. It's a very uncommon thing. So is it possible that the conditions around happiness, health, and wealth are centered in, fall back on, a belief system that is somehow in error? That we have adopted a belief system that prevents this from being a realization in our life, regardless of the effort. In this case, the world is flat and not round, even though there are examples of people who are happy, healthy, and wealthy. It is not a very popular thing. So if happiness, health, and wealth is something you aspire to for yourself, for your family, for your friends, don't be surprised if you're going to have to hold beliefs that are not popular, that you're going to have to embrace beliefs that are not popular, that are actually uncommon. Again, the percentage of people who are happy statistically is 20%, healthy is about 28%, maybe not even now, and wealthy, it's only about 1%. 1 to 3% of the population are financially independent. So after all these years of work, after century or generation after generation, there's a common passage in the Bible that says the sins of the father are handed to the son. Is it possible that the sins that we're talking about here is a belief system that paralyzes the possibility of somebody experiencing these things in abundance? And my answer to that question, or my conclusion based on my research, is absolutely. That our belief system governs what we believe possible, not what is possible, just what we believe to be possible, and therefore what we allow for ourselves as an experience. We would not dare send a child out into the ocean if we thought they would encounter the edge. And so we would hold them back and create a fear of the edge, even though it's just something in our own imagination and not an actual reality or a fact. So the concept that I'm trying to give you here in this opening slide is how important it is for us to reflect on those beliefs that are holding us back or preventing us from experiencing the full total of what's possible. Happiness, health, and wealth is no question a possibility and demonstrated so, but we may not be experiencing it in abundance because of some beliefs that we're somehow locked into us, maybe at an early age in life, maybe at a later stage in life, but nonetheless, a belief system that's holding us back, beliefs that we believe to be true that are not true. So let me switch gears here for a second and introduce you to a slide that I found absolutely fascinating when I read about this. This was back in, as you can see, 1966, February 2nd, a guy named Baxter who worked for the CIA as a, what do you call those guys that they, polygraph technician. He was a polygraph technician for the CIA. And so what you see here is an actual polygraph chart that was done February 2nd, 1966. He was having fun in his lab one day, experimenting with a plant. How many of you have been taught or believe that a plant, if you talk to it the right way, if you say nice things, maybe if you play music for it or whatever, this plant is going to respond somehow. It's going to grow nice and healthy and whatever. I mean, is it true? Is it a wives' tale? What is it? Well, it turns out that this guy was having the same ideas in his head and he wanted to experiment. So he put his polygraph machine across the leaf of the plant to see if the plant would actually respond. And so he began to experiment, trying to make the plant react to some of the things that he was doing, very unsuccessfully, by the way. Point number one that you see on the slide here, just to be sure that this was actually working, he tapped the polygraph machine just to see, is this actually on? And of course, you can see it is responding. Well, he was at a point where he was quite frustrated. He was standing about, 15 feet away, I read, from the plant, and contemplating a manner in which he could threaten the plant's well-being, when all of a sudden, he has a thought. It's a thought to put a match to the leaf and burn the plant. Now, what's interesting is, point number 3, you see the leaf react, and boy, did it react. What's amazing about this is that it was just a thought. He didn't actually do anything yet, and he was standing away from the plant. So the plant somehow managed to interpret that thought and react to it, leading us to believe that a plant can in fact have conscious awareness, and more importantly, can perceive a threat. But what's fascinating to me about this is he had been trying to do this all along and was not successful until the thought of burning the leaf. Well, it was an inspired thought. It was just something he just was inspired by. So something changed in the way he was thinking or communicating his thought, that the plant most certainly received the message and began to react. What's so fascinating is that there have been many, many experiments that have been done with plants to see if, in fact, this effect was an anomaly or something that they could produce consistent results with. And some of these experiments I'm going to share with you in a minute that are quite extensive and quite remarkable. But think about this for a second. Does a plant have consciousness? And is it possible that we can communicate a thought without words in a particular way, where an object outside of ourself, what appears to be separate and apart from us, and even something that we don't even consider awake or alive in terms of consciousness, in fact does react? So here's another experiment that was done. I'm going to refer to a book that I read that I actually have with me here, a book called The Intention Experiment by Lynn McTaggart. This is one of the many books that I've read in which there are fascinating scientific studies that have happened all over the world in relation to this type of a subject material. One of the experiments that was done was they had a plant inside what they call a mu cage. A mu cage is a cage that shields electromagnetically anything that's in it. We used to use these things around our television cathode tubes to protect the tubes, depending on where you may have placed the thing in your room, and you might have an Earth's magnetic field line interfering with it. So a mu cage shields anything from electromagnetic frequencies. They wanted to eliminate the possibility that this plant could be affected by something that they had no control over. So they put a plant inside a mu cage at MIT University in Boston, and then on the other side of the Atlantic, they had a group of people gathered scientists to conduct this research. And they included in this group a control group of psychics, people who are known psychic. Psychic is the mental capacity of someone, their ability to have focused and clear thought. That's essentially what a psychic is. Everyone is a psychic, but they have the ability to channel or focus that thought with clear intention, crystal clear reception and projection. So they felt, okay, let's get these guys together and let's give them instruction. The instruction was, let's see if you can make the plant at MIT University glow, literally glow to the naked eye, under observation by scientists at MIT across the pond. So here they are in England, here they are in the United States, and they're imagining in their mind this plant glowing. And under observation by the group in MIT, guess what they perceived? You bet. They saw it glow. Now, what does this tell us? Not only that we can impact what we might consider something that's not even connected to us, that's living, but through distance, tremendous distance, and instantaneously, as if distance doesn't even enter the equation, we can have this effect. With controlled thought, they're able to, in imagination, create an outcome that's observable on a physical reality in an objective experiment. So this was one of the many experiments I found really fascinating about the idea of being able to impact the physical world around us with our thoughts that we imagine, if they are clear thoughts and if they are thoughts that are filled with some type of an emotion. And so how powerful is that? How important is it to know that? It's incredible that this information was created. This slide was in 1966, and you can imagine all the information that's happened since and the experiments that have happened since that is still not yet common to man. It is yet not believed the world to be round in the context of what our thoughts are actually capable of in terms of impacting the physical world around us. Now, we've heard about this idea. We've toyed with this idea. There have been some presentations to some degree called, for instance, The Secret. That was a video and a book that came out. That was maybe the first time it was spoken about on such a wide scale. And even that information was misconstrued. People would say, oh, you have to just think about something and it'll happen. Well, that's not what we're seeing on this graph. It's not enough to think about something. It wasn't until that emotion was kicked into the thought process that the plant reacted. So it has to be a thought that's emotionalized, an inspired thought, something that's real, that's being generated by your body. Somehow your body is able to transmit a message through distance and time that can be perceived by the recipient. Now, this is important. We can agree that somehow there's a mechanism. This happened. These experiments did take place, and they've been able to prove this point. So there is some means by which we can imagine something in our mind and transmit that information through distance and time, and it can be perceived and have a physical impact. There is a mechanism there. Let's take a look at this next slide. This is really cool. This is the work by Dr. Emoto, Masaru Emoto from Japan. And you can find all this research online, by the way. I've got a book in my hands here that I refer to. But here's a guy who thought, let's take a look and see what the impact of thoughts or frequency can have on various elements. For instance, in this particular case, he used water. He wanted to see what does our thought process or the energy input into the system have an effect on water. So he took water and put it in a glass, in a vial. He would then subject that water to either a word, listen to this, a word written on the outside of that glass, a word written on the outside of that glass. Or he subjected the glass to music, or he subjected the glass to thoughts such as prayer. And I think he subjected it to sounds, other sounds, like words spoken. The point was, whatever he subjected that water to. Now, I'm just saying this thought of the idea of it being written. How can something written on a piece of paper matter to an inanimate object? Well, let's just understand what it means to write something on a piece of paper. We write words using symbols. We have letters, and each letter has a symbolic representation, and we combine those letters to create a word, which is trying to communicate or convey an idea. So there is power and energy in the construction of that word, regardless of how you construct it. As a thought, as something written, you are putting energy into the universal mind or the system, and it's a constructed idea. It has intention. It has energy in it. It requires effort to put it together. And so they subjected the water to these words: compassion, thank you, wisdom. They subjected the water to heavy metal music, words like "I will kill you, you fool." And here's the thing. This water was frozen and then put under a microscope to see the effect. And there's the effect. It's quite remarkable to see how words like compassion, thank you, wisdom can create such beautiful crystalline structures. Water has a hexagonal natural structure. It's a very natural structure if the water is, I guess, energized in the right way. But if it's energized in the wrong way or in a negative impulse, like heavy metal music, "I will kill you," words like that, "you fool," you can't even get the water to produce a crystal. That's astounding. That water can be impacted by thoughts, words. Here's on the right-hand side, water before and after a Buddhist prayer. This is water they took from a polluted river and water that you could not drink. But then all of a sudden you see the difference between the water before the prayer and after the prayer. How many of you have been taught in your religious context that it's important to pray before a meal? Now it's not just words. Now it's not just, a religious idea. Maybe there was some truth to that belief. There was something behind that belief that led us to be told or taught that, but we didn't have the why. We didn't have the real understanding. But when we consider this demonstration here, is it maybe relevant that we give some thought to the energy or the food that we're about to eat and maybe put that energy into the food that we're about to eat? Consider this. How much of the food that you're eating is actually water? Consider this. How much of you is actually water? What are you thinking about yourself? What are you saying about yourself quietly in your mind? If this is the impact on the water, and you're mostly water, what about other people? What are you thinking about other people in your mind? And by the way, it doesn't matter where they are in the world. As the earlier experiment tells us, through distance and time, this impact happens. That somehow there is a mechanism that is able to communicate regardless of distance and time based on our thoughts that are energized by feeling. And here it is in a demonstration in what you and I would consider an inanimate object, something that's not susceptible to emotion. And yet here you have the evidence that it is completely susceptible to that. How powerful is that to know that this is the nature of the reality that we live in? Let's take another look at this. If there is in fact a mechanism, maybe that mechanism is not so hard to find. When we examine things under what's called Kirlian photography, the ability to actually image energy fields beyond the spectrum that you and I are ordinarily able to see. This is beyond the visual spectrum of Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, and violet. So this is a spectrum of light in a higher frequency. And they're able to see this light that is emanating from matter, whether that matter is organic, such as the human, or that matter is organic, such as the leaf, a plant, or that matter is what you and I consider the material world, elemental world, such as a key made of a combination of metals. The energy that is animating those things into reality, the energy that is there, in them, being generated by them and for them and through them, that makes them them, that energy, that omnipresent energy is the same. In other words, are we looking at God or a mechanism of God, that thing that we always say, you know, God is in everything and everyone, maybe that idea is the energy that animates, that gives life to, that makes anything and everything possible, manifest, is the same energy, only it's organized differently in each of these things, and to higher or lesser degrees of awareness. Is a key aware that it's a key? Probably not. I don't know for sure. Earth flat, earth round, I don't know. At this point in time in my understanding, the key is not aware that it's a key. And the metal that it's made of is not aware that it's been organized as a key. Is a plant aware that it's a plant? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure now that it's aware, because it can be affected by another awareness. And then, of course, there's the human being. Are you aware that you are a human being? So this is a higher form of creation, clearly, because there's a higher form of awareness. And so maybe what we're starting to understand is God is, in fact, the manifestation of all things, separated by awareness, individualized by awareness, higher and higher organized forms of awareness that are being made manifest. But the source and energy that animates all these things is one and the same. So would it surprise you that you can communicate with other things when you're made of the same thing? When that thing is the energy field that is animating all things in reality. In other words, is there really one source? Is there really one field of energy that's giving life to everything that we perceive in our current reality? Very, very profound. The idea that energy is everything and everything is energy has been proven in science. And so at the root of all matter, at the root of all things, is the energy that it's made of. That is what's common to us all, and perhaps that's where the mechanism is responsible for how we're able to communicate and interact with these things, even though we may not know we are doing that, such as the leaf, such as the water. And so take a look at this, that maybe the mechanism has something to do with the frequency or the vibration that individuates everything, you know, that communicates and compounds and etc. So energy and vibration seems to be at the core of the material world, of the world in which we live in. That seems to be part of that mechanism. This is what we can speculate. This is what we know. But if we go further into it, we'll know that that's even more true. These are the books that I was referring to. The Intention Experiment, if you want to read it. The Hidden Messages in the Water, Emoto, and The Field, one of the first books that I read from Lynn McTaggart, where this was really where the advanced sciences was starting to go. And I'm going to share with you some of the information from that book in a second here. But what we learn in this particular experience is an equation. What we learn is an equation that those of you who have been familiarized with this equation through Niken's curriculum called Humans Being More, you would have known or have seen this presentation at some point in time, that there is a relationship between the intention, the mechanism, and the results that we experience. But what science is showing us is that the mechanism, for the most part, is invisible. We don't really quite know it. We know it's there, and it seems to be able to work across time and space. So it doesn't seem to operate in the way that you and I would consider traditional, in the way that you and I would consider an understanding. Now, if you had physics at all, background, or in high school, maybe you remember some of your basic physics, you never learned this equation. I didn't. My background's aerospace engineering. I didn't learn this equation. And I went through university studying very advanced physics. I didn't learn this equation. But here's what we learned from the experiments that I just showed you. The mechanism is there, but it's invisible. For the most part, it is invisible to us. In fact, in that case, we can just take it out of the equation, because there's an infinite number of possibilities, but there is most certainly a mechanism. We would agree. But that mechanism is invisible. So let's make it invisible. Would you agree that the leaf would not have glowed had there not been an intention? Would you agree that Baxter's experiment, he could not have gotten the polygraph to do anything had there not been an intention. Would you agree that at the root of all of these things, what causes a result is not the mechanism. The mechanism is there, but it's the intention, utilizing the mechanism to prove, to create a result. So what we gain from this understanding is the core cause, the cause of all results are intentions. The mechanism is not important. But how many people are held back because they think they can't do something because they don't have an awareness of the mechanism? And so, oh, I'm not going to take that vacation, or I'm not going to do that new business, or I'm not going to do whatever limiting belief they have because they think they need a mechanism before they can make a decision to do something. They're paralyzed by that idea, when in fact, this is showing us it doesn't work that way. The mechanism is there, it's invisible, it'll find its way through some natural law of physics that we may or may not understand. But the intention has to be clear for that mechanism to be of any importance and relevance. And so if the intention is not clear, all the mechanisms in the world don't matter. But if the intention is clear, the mechanism is there to produce the result. There is a physical result. Now, here's where it gets a little spooky and interesting from a physics point of view. So I'm hopefully you're going to stay with me on this, because this is the hardest part of this presentation, but it is the part that takes it to a level where it's irrefutable. If you're somebody who's still sitting there wondering if this is an opinion, this is something you can do your own research on. I suggest you look up May 27 double slit experiment. It was May 27, 2015. They did this experiment. This is not the first time they did this experiment. In fact, this experiment is talked about in the book, the field. This double slit experiment is maybe something you learned about in high school physics. I did. But what's interesting about the experiment as they've evolved this experiment is they started using atoms instead of photons. So let me give you a bit of background here. If I direct a beam of light at two slits on a piece of paper, and I'm going to need some help here with my annotation. Here we go. So let's say this is a piece of paper, and it has two slits in it. And I direct a beam of light at this piece of paper. What you would expect is that you would get two slits on the other side, imaged on the other side on your screen where you're imaging things or where you're observing it, let's say your camera. That's not what we get. What we actually get is this image. And so to explain this, we learn in high school physics that a beam of light, which consists of photons, doesn't act like particles. It would act like particles if it did this. But this is a description made by a wave. It's as if a wave of water hit this paper, a plane wave, meaning a wave that came this way and went through both slits at the same time. And then on the other side, it makes these wave patterns. Each slit makes its own wave pattern, and those two wave patterns interfere with one another as it's projected forward. And when it hits the screen, all those constructive and destructive interferences are imaged on the screen. The interference of the two waves coming out the other side interfere. So we learn in physics that a photon acts both like a particle and like a wave. Interestingly enough, if there was only one slit and not two, what you would see is this particular image, which is the image that it would form as if it was a particle. But if there's two slits, it's not acting like a particle, it acts like a wave. So this thing called a photon decides how it's going to act based on the conditions you set up. Okay, so that's what we learn. Now, if I were to shoot a pea, let's say through, these are doors. Let's imagine these are doors. Let's just say you're the size of a pea. And we were to throw you against one of those doors, against this wall, and you were to go through one of those doors, you would expect that you would land on one of these two beams here, one of these two places here. That's what you would expect, because you're a particle. You're not a wave. You're not a photon which can act either way. On the May 27 experiment, they used particles to prove this point. They used individualized atoms that they shot through this screen. And they created a result that has enormous ramifications for people who are looking to understand how the world works around them and how you can create your own reality. So here's what happened. We learned that if you shoot this particle and there's only one door open, and as it goes through, what do we expect if it's one door open? If it's only one door open, we expect it'll hit and form a dot on the screen, right? That's what we expect. Imagine if you had one door open and you ran through that door and you landed on the wall across the door, it would be just one spot you would make, one splat maybe, depending on how fast you were going. But here's what they did. Halfway, so it's going through, and halfway between the screen and where they imaged the screen, the idea, they changed their mind and they opened the second door. So the particle is already sitting here. They then change the door, which is over here. It's already gone through it. And guess what happens when it hits the screen? It acts like it went through both doors. How is it possible? Here's an object. It's shot at a screen. One door open. It goes through the door. It's halfway through to the point where it's going to be imaged by the camera, and they open the second door, and instead of being one dot, they get this pattern, as if it's gone through both doors at the same time, interfering with themselves. Let's show another experiment. So they take the same particle. This time they shoot it through the screen with both doors open. So what are we expecting? We're expecting this image up here, right? So it shoots it to the screen with both doors open. So now this particle somehow seems to be at two places at the same time. And then they close the first door just before it hits the screen. And what do we see? As if it only went through one door. So if we shoot the particle through both doors open and we do nothing, this is the result. You see this pattern. If we shoot the particle with only one door open, this is the result. But if we decide halfway there to change what we want to see, it changes the result, which means the particle is not operating independent of you. The person who's making the decision to change the situation after the fact is changing how the particle behaves. The result, again, what we're hearing and seeing here is that where you place your focus, where you place your consciousness, based on the decision you make, what you want to see is what you will see. It's not happening independent of you. It's not like, oh, they shot the particle, too late, I changed my mind. Oh, well, no. You change your mind, you change the result, which means nothing in physical reality, if we extrapolate this understanding, nothing that is actually in physical reality is happening independent of you. It's absolutely incredible. I want to read you something here that I've got, one of my favorite books here. It says here, experiments recently conducted by Merle Lawrence in Princeton and Dartmouth in the later psychology laboratory prove that what you see when you look at something depends not so much on what is there as on the assumption you make when you look. Since what we believe to be the real physical world is actually only an assumptive world, it is not surprising that these experiments prove that what happens to be solid reality is actually the result of expectations or assumptions. So even though this thing appears to be happening independent of you, you are the variable that determines what it's going to look like. So how important is it to understand that your thoughts, what you imagine to be true, what you imagine to be real, is actually creating the reality for you? It could be completely different for someone else. But your thoughts are actually creating a reality that is observable in the physical world. So the physical world is a manifestation of your imagination, which suggests we live on 7 billion planets, this thing called Earth. There are 7 billion people, and there are 7 billion Earths. Now, there happens to be things in common because we happen to believe certain things to be true that are common. And those are the things that give us what we believe is the common experience. But within each individual mind is an interpretation of reality, and therefore a different reality. So this is super, 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 super important information because it tells us nothing is happening to you. None of your experiences in life are things that are happening to you that are happening because of something outside of you. They're happening through you because of something inside of you. How you see things, what you believe to be true. This is super important information if you're looking to change your reality. So let's take this another step forward, if we will. I want you to imagine that this is you, and everything inside of this blue line, this blue circle, is everything you are. I mean, this is what you think, this is what you feel, this is what you believe, this is your experiences of life, this is your material reality, all the things you own, et cetera, et cetera. This is the blueprint of you, the sum total of you. Now imagine a person next to you. You might be sitting next to someone, so just go ahead and look at them. Now they appear to be somebody separate and apart from you. That's not hard to see. That's what you're seeing. With your eyes, you're seeing somebody who's separate and apart from you. And of course, they're defined by their own reality, by their own thoughts, by their own results, by their own conditions, by their own beliefs, by their own experiences, etc. But wouldn't you agree that to some degree there's something common between the two of you? I mean, if I took your DNA and I sampled your DNA, compared your DNA to the DNA of a chimpanzee, do you know that you guys would compare at 98%? You'd have the 98% same DNA, so there's certainly a lot more in common if we looked at your DNA, just between you and a chimpanzee. So clearly between you and another human being, there's probably a lot more similarities. Now, in mathematics, we used to call these Venn diagrams. Everything over here, let's say, is all the apples that are red, and over here, these are all the apples that are green, but where there is a common point is the apples that are both red and green. These are the apples that are both red and green. Some of these apples that are red have a bit of green on them. Some of these apples that are green have a bit of red on them. So where the two meet is where those apples are both red and green. That's a Venn diagram, right? Now, I'm going to take this one step further. So you will agree there's probably more in common between you and another person than what you maybe think about when you just look at somebody with your eyes. Or imagine with your belief system that they're different. But what about you and the bigger ticket? Let's compare you to the great I am. Now, there's a reason why there's a solid line here. This solid line represents a limitation. In Venn diagrams, you're not allowed to use a dotted line unless the group that you're referring to is infinite. So an infinite group is a dotted line. A finite group is a solid line. Surely you and I would agree that we consider ourselves limited. To some degree, we are finite. I mean, our physical body has an ending point, right? We can see the ending point. So there are certain things that are true about that statement. There are certain limitations that are true about what you're experiencing yourself as based on your senses. But when we refer to God or the great I am, we always refer to God or the great I am as the infinite, infinite, the whatever. We never refer to God as a finite anything. So, if this is the group we call God, the great I am here, the purple, and this is you, what we've all referred to as the sum total of you, what is the intersection of you and God? For time's sake, I'm not going to leave that as an open-ended question. I'm going to just answer it. If this is infinite and this is finite, the infinite contains the finite. Therefore, the intersection between you and God is you. This is an incredibly important point for those who have a background in theology or a religious context. We are always told God is in us. No, that is not correct. While God is in us, that creates a context that God is separate from us somehow, but still within us. But what this is telling us is what the first law in the Bible is telling us, what Genesis is telling us, and the law that Jesus said was the greatest of all. There is one God. If there is only one God, and that God is infinite, then can you point to anything or anyone that is outside of God, that is a subset that exists separate and apart from God? And the answer is no, you cannot hold those beliefs to be true. If there is one God, and that God is infinite, then everything is that God, and nothing is not that God. No matter how you define it or what you believe to be true, you cannot hold two beliefs to be in contradiction and be true. So the truth of that belief that there is one God and that God is infinite is that you are in fact the manifestation of that one infinite God, perceiving through your awareness of self as separate and apart, no different than you feel yourself as separate and apart from the person sitting next to you. Even though that's just a perception, that's not reality. Reality is there's one thing creating everything, appearing that this thing has many tentacles, many representations, animate, inanimate, consciously aware to some degree, very consciously aware. So that one great I am is manifesting itself in an infinite number of ways. Therefore, it wouldn't be surprising when you hear Scripture say, I know every hair on your head. Because every hair on your head is the source. It wouldn't be surprising when you hear the Master teach, I and the Father are one, though the Father is greater than I am. He's describing the picture in the screen here. I and the Father are one. Though the Father is greater than I am because he is aware of himself as a human being. But the Father is everything, including that human being. So the Father is greater than he is. The personification of the Father. So the statement that Jesus made, I and the Father are one, not only applies to him, but it applies to all things, because that's the truth and the nature of reality. Are you aware of that? That's all that remains to be seen. Because as we have learned, what you believe to be true and what you believe to be true about yourself determines your possibilities. And if you were the Son of God, if you were somebody who was consciously aware that you are the Father and the Son simultaneously, if you were the one in a physical body who contained the consciousness big enough to understand that truth, what would you say about yourself when asked? When they asked him, he said, blasphemy. What was his comment back? So the Pharisees said he was blasphemous for making that claim. He says, you claim that you're God. They wanted to stone him. He says, why do you want to stone me? And they said, because you're saying you're God. When you're saying I and the Father are one, though the Father is greater than I am, you're claiming yourself as God. And then he turned to the Pharisees, who are supposed to be the experts in the law of Moses, turned to them and said, is it not written in your law, ye are gods? And the answer is, of course, it is. It's in many of the biblical scriptures that the prophets were being communicated by the Creator, that they are in fact the representation of the Creator. So there is nothing out there that contradicts what you're seeing on this screen, except beliefs. And if those beliefs are contradictory to this very, very important point that I'm making, it has a dramatic impact on your life and what is possible for you, or what you can think is possible for you, because you see yourself as lesser than what you in fact really are. You're manifesting a reality that is lesser than your potential. So all we really need to start getting aware of is how much we are in the likeness and image of the Creator, just as it's stated in that great book. You were created in the likeness and image. How? How am I in the likeness and image of the Creator? What is common to me and the Creator? Awareness. Conscious awareness. The ability to imagine myself to be anything, and therefore I am. Let there be light, and there was light. The thing that's common to the two of us is not the physical body. That's just the manifestation. It's the consciousness that's common to the two of us. The awareness. That thing we call imagination. That's where your consciousness is. It's what you imagine. So let's take this and really, really examine that. It suggests that God is a frequency that exists within us, and all we really need to do is tune in. So if you consider the miracles that Jesus would perform, whenever he performed a miracle, he would always perform a miracle by first separating himself from the crowd. He would always tune in. He would first connect with the source. He would connect with the Father and say a prayer. If you read scripture, you know that this is true. And so what he was doing is he's moving himself, his conscious awareness, away from Jesus, the man, the person in the flesh, to awareness that he is one with the Father. And when he is in awareness that he is one with the Father, he is most certainly more capable of anything, which is why all these things that he could do is because it's through the Father that he's able to do these things. What does that mean? It means it's not Jesus, the man, doing these things. It's Jesus the Father, the higher consciousness, that's doing these things, because it's in that reality that that's possible. It's in the possibility that miracles can happen, that miracles happen. If you don't believe in miracles, chances of you ever seeing one or creating one are zero. You will not see what you don't believe to be true. But you will see what you believe to be true in your heart. That's also scripture. So we've got to move ourselves out of a limited space of how we see ourselves in the world into a higher consciousness. And that's what it means to get connected. Connected within. You know, there's an expression in the Bible that says, actually not an expression, a quote, a direct quote. Where is heaven? Now, I know you guys aren't talking about because we got you on mute, but a lot of people are afraid to die because, well, they're afraid to die. But everybody wants to go to heaven, but they know they have to die to go to heaven. Where did they learn that? Where did you learn that you actually have to die to go to heaven? That heaven is a place or a realm that exists outside of you, separate from you when you're dead. That's not what Jesus said, so I don't know why anybody believes that. Jesus said heaven is within. So if you believe that he said anything of any validity, then you would believe that he said heaven is within, therefore heaven is within. It's a place within your state of consciousness. It's not a place outside of you. It's not a place you go to separate from you. You don't have to die to get there. You can get there in an instant, on a dime. You get there by connecting to your source. Heaven is within. It's a frequency that exists within you. It's a state of consciousness. And from heaven, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all things will be added unto you. First, connect within. I and the Father are one. Go there first before you project into the world anything you want to create. And so from that space and that place, he would generate the miracles. Because in that possibility exists, and therefore the miracle is the result. The intention and the result match. Why? Because he's in a state of mind where it's possible, rather than a state of mind where it's not possible. He moves from the square planet, the flat planet, to the round planet in his mind, within the consciousness, within the space of heaven, within the possibility, within the connection to all that is. And then from there, he would create the miracle. So if we want to change our experiences in life, all we need to do is change our point of view. Change our consciousness from the one that we're currently aware of into one that we can imagine ourselves being. Because this is the one that's very familiar to you. The one I'm circling here is extremely familiar to you. But you can imagine another thing. I'll give you an example of how powerful the imagination is. If I said to you, I don't want you to imagine you're looking at a pink elephant. Don't imagine you're looking at a pink elephant. I'll bet you 10 to 1 in the flash of a second, your mind immediately imagines a pink elephant. Now, come on. Have you ever seen a pink elephant? Has the world ever been introduced to a pink elephant? No. But you, in your mind, in your imagination, are able to imagine something you've never seen. That's how powerful your imagination is. The likeness and image of the Creator, to imagine what is possible. Not what is, but what is possible. And so all you need to do, first and foremost, if you want to move into a greater experience of life, is just imagine yourself in that greater experience. That is the key to creating the reality. Intention is reality. Intention is nothing more than your imagination focused. Your imagination focused on a different reality, and that reality, by the laws of this incredible universe, must manifest. Now, I was given this instruction, this diagram, by a mentor, Bob Proctor, my mentor, who's taught this to the world, which helps us understand this concept in a little greater depth and why we are currently experiencing what we're experiencing in life. So this object, this describes our body. So let's take the top half of that circle, the large circle, and call that the conscious mind. This is the place where you think, the thoughts you think, that you're aware that you're thinking. Like you're hearing me talk right now, you're hearing the words that I'm saying. But those thoughts are being impacted by your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is saying, what do I feel about what he's saying? What do I feel about those thoughts that I'm entertaining right now? Do I feel that this is right? Do I feel that this is wrong? Where are you getting this? If it's just a thought and it's nothing, it's neutral, the feeling, the emotion attached to that thought is based on what? It's mixing, it's intermingling with your feelings or your beliefs. I come to you and I say, the world is round, and you believe it's flat. You're going to say, what do I think about that idea, the world is round? I don't think he's right about that. I don't think I buy that. I don't believe that. Okay, fine. So you go continue to live in your body as if the world is flat. That's fine. And all you're going to experience is the life of somebody who's living on a flat world. But you could have easily have entertained that thought, said, okay, I don't know if I feel right about this, but I want to feel right about this because I'd rather live in a round world than a flat world. How do I augment my feelings about this? Because if I can augment my feelings about this, I'll start acting like somebody who lives in a round world, and guess what I'll start to experience? The same thing that people living on a round world will experience. Now my experience won't be limited to a flat world. I'm talking about your health. I'm talking about your wealth. I'm talking about your happiness, your relationships, you name it. I'm talking about everything. So this power, the infinite power of the universe that is animating everything all the time, is coming into you and allowing you to perceive yourself as you and to allow you to have thoughts that you imagine are yours. Those thoughts then get impressed in the subconscious mind, and how you feel about those thoughts will get expressed physically, and those physical things produce results. That man in that laboratory imagined burning the leaf, and his feeling about it was excitement. There must have been a feeling that was congruent, because what happened was the result was the plant reacted. So the physical mechanism between what he imagined in his mind and what he felt about that was somehow being broadcast through the mechanism of the universe, frequency, vibration, however you want to refer to it, producing a result that impacted the leaf. That's how it works. Or you imagine love and you impact the water, the frequency of your body, and you imagine a person that you love somewhere in the world, anywhere in the world, time and space doesn't matter. You imagine somebody you love, that's putting a feeling out into the universe that they are able to perceive, and it affects them in a positive way. Oh, there we go. Got my computer back for a second. So this is the way it works. Now, let's add something to it. You decide you want to get involved in the Econ business and you want to build a Royal Diamond business. Is that a good idea? I'll tell you something. As a Royal Diamond, it's a great idea. You should do it. It's fun. It's amazing. Your life will be forever transformed. You'll affect the lives of hundreds of thousands of people across the globe. You'll have influence. You'll have joy. You'll have rewards, financial, physical. I mean, it's just the most amazing life. It's a great idea. And so I've given it positives. So you imagine for a bit, man, what would it be like to be a royal diamond? What would be the life of a royal diamond if I was to attain that? How would I live my life? And guess what happens when you start to think and imagine that? All of a sudden, we're confronted by what? Well, all these antennas here at the top, these represent your five senses: touch, taste, smell, hearing, sight. These are the things that have given you instruction and information about the nature of reality your entire life. And you have devised a system of beliefs around that. And so those beautiful thoughts of what it means to be a royal diamond all of a sudden meet the past. What do we believe to be true about this idea? Oh, I'm an idiot. People don't like me. Nobody knows me. I don't have any money. I have no influence. Few people ever succeed. Blah, 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 blah. All those negatives that are sitting there and how you feel about what you're thinking about are simultaneously at work within you. And your body picks up the vibration, which is what we call a double binding message. It's positive and negative, so it's not really anything. What are you broadcasting to the universe? What's the results you experience? Confusion, disbelief, doubt, all the things that cause people to not experience the results they really want to experience, even though it's an incredibly good idea. Something within themselves is impacting the frequency of that idea that is being broadcast out. And because whatever we're broadcasting is creating our reality, we experience that reality, which then further reinforces through our senses. We see it, and it further reinforces our doubt and suspicion. That is the cycle that most people are on when it comes to areas of health, wealth, and happiness. They're in a spiral going the wrong way because the feedback loop is a negative feedback loop. At worst, it's confusion. How do we overcome this? I mean, we can go to a psychiatrist and try to figure out what all those negatives are and see if we can outroot them. That's a hard way to do it. Jesus didn't have to do that, and he didn't teach that to the disciples. There's a better way. There's a fast way. You can short circuit the system. Would you like to know what that way is? Just nod. Okay. It's one word. It's encompassed in one word, and this word is extremely common to Scripture. And that word is faith. Let me switch this so we can get that on screen. My computer is being taxed right now with all the things that it's doing. So let me there we go. Okay, faith. Faith is the word, we hear about it, we talk about it, but what does it really mean to have faith? Am I to have faith that there's a God separate from me, deciding for me whether I should be worthy enough to receive what I imagine is good enough for me, or something I would like to experience? Is there a God separate and outside from me, being this judgment God that's deciding for me what I can and cannot have? Is that how God operates? Or does God operate by law? Gravity is gravity. You're a nice person, you step off a 10-story building, you experience gravity. Just the same way if you were a really bad person and you stepped off a 10-story building, you're going to experience gravity. The same way. The law is not moral-based. The law is universal-based. So what is faith? Faith is what? Do you have faith in a God that acts like Santa Claus? Or do you have faith in the laws that God created, the laws of the universe that's clearly stated you are created in the likeness and image of the Father? You and the Father are one. Though the Father may be greater than you are, as long as you tune into the frequency, that's a different God, isn't it? That's the God within. That's the heaven within. And so all of a sudden now, this idea of faith means something completely different than faith that there is somebody outside of me judging me, deciding for me what is okay for me, based on, how many Hail Marys I may have said in one church gathering or something. I was raised Catholic, so I only got to be able to be, I was only good if I said the Hail Marys and Our Fathers that I had to say when I went to confession. They decided for me what was my penance. And yet, we're talking about the same God, aren't we? Or are we? I think their version of God is vastly different than my understanding of it based on this presentation. So faith in what? Faith that there is a process. And faith can short circuit whatever you believe to be true, because what you believe to be true is giving you the life you're living. If you want to expand that possibility, you have to imagine a different life and have faith that that possibility and that mechanism go hand in hand. That there is a mechanism out there in spite of you. You just have to overcome the inertia of you in the old version. The old version of you. The version of you that allows those negatives to be part of you. You just reject that notion. You do not give any credence to that notion. None of those beliefs, none of those things we call doubt. Fear not. Have no doubt. Faith, if you have. But the faith of a mustard seed, you could say to that mountain, move, and that mountain will move. Faith in a process that's lawful. And so the concept here, there we go, is to have an attitude that's consistent and congruent with the results you want to experience. Your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions need to be consistent. Regardless of what you believe to be true, it's no longer acceptable for you to rely on your beliefs, because your beliefs are completely confused by what's possible based on the past. And so faith is basically saying, it doesn't matter what I believe to be true. What is true is what matters. I may believe the world is flat. It doesn't matter. It may be round, and I'm going to live as if it is round, because that opens up the possibility of all the things that go with a round world. I'm going to, regardless of your wealth, regardless of what's in your wallet, what's in your bank account, etc., you're going to operate as if those things are the new reality, the new version of you. And according to the laws that we've been seeing, what you observe as true is what you will experience as true. What you observe as true is what you will experience as true. That photon or that particle that went through one or another didn't matter. When you changed your mind, you changed the outcome. So we have to have an attitude of gratitude, because an attitude of gratitude is the most powerful way to plug into the frequency of the divine, your divine nature. If you think about it in Scripture, we're taught that Jesus would always pray before performing a miracle. Well, he gave us instructions on how to pray. He gave us instructions on how to perform the miracle. He gave his apostles instructions. In fact, he was angry with them when they came back and they didn't perform the miracles. He says, I've not taught you how to do this? So clearly whatever he was doing was teachable, learnable. Did he not say in Scripture that you and I are capable of all the miracles he performed and greater still things yet? Do you or don't you believe that? Because that's going to determine whether or not you do it. And so it's clearly something that we can learn. It's clearly something that we can teach. And it's clearly something he said that's true. And if you believe that what he said was true is true, then I believe that's true. So what he was saying in very clear words was, whatever you ask for and pray for, ask as though you have received them and you shall receive them. Whatever you ask for and pray for, ask as though you have received them and you shall receive them. I don't think you could get any more clear than that. The instructions are, whatever you want to imagine possible for you, whatever you ask for and pray for, ask as though you already have received it, and you will receive it. He's giving us the instruction of the law. So if I imagine something as if I've already received it, how would I ask for something I've already received? What are the words that would come out of my mouth? I've asked this question in audiences everywhere in the world. Small groups, large groups. And the answer always is the same. Every time I ask somebody to answer that question, let's see. I got a response in writing here. Let's see if I can see it. Chat. There it is. Yes, Suzanne Steele. You would say, thank you. That's the first words that would come out of your mouth is thank you. Which is why Jesus would always say, thank you, Father, you always hear me. Wow, that's a pretty impressive statement to make before you perform a miracle. You're already acknowledging the miracle. You're establishing the fact as if it already is so. So the instructions he gave and utilized were the same. And that's what he taught, and that's what he wants us to know, and that's what is true. And that is what science is now backing up as truth. When you imagine something to be true in consciousness, you shift the reality, and it's a physically measurable thing. So he would say the gratitude of attitude, or the gratitude is the attitude that you want to host, because that's the frequency. The frequency of plugging you into the divine nature of reality, your greater self, your I am self, is gratitude. That's the frequency. You'll know if you're doing it right because you will feel gratitude. That's the feeling. We all know what it feels like to be grateful. So when you're praying for something or asking for something to happen that you've not yet seen in the physical world, but you're still wanting to manifest, are you doing it with an attitude of gratitude, or are you doing it with desperation? To them that have, more will be given, and to them that have not, more will be taken. Another demonstration of the law. For those that have, they obviously have a certain attitude. We call that consciousness or prosperity consciousness. To those that have not, more will be taken. We call that a consciousness or an attitude of poverty consciousness. So people who have poverty consciousness never have anything. They lose what they have. People who have prosperity consciousness gain more. This is simply a demonstration of the law, and this is not God condemning anybody. He's just saying the law is the law. Gravity is gravity. How you apply it, that's you. But it's the same for everyone, and we're always in the state of applying it. Every single step of your life, every moment you're thinking a thought, every feeling you're feeling is a projection into the reality you're going to experience. Attitude of gratitude. And this is what makes it all possible. This is what drives the engine into unlimited possibilities for you. My computer seems to be stuck. There we go. So what we need are clear intentions. Imagine how you want to be, how you want to live clearly. Focus on it with such intensity that you can feel it in your blood. When you feel it and you walk around as if it already is so, with such expectancy and such gratitude for receiving it, then it will become so. And there's only one thing that you have to do in the meantime. Because what this law tells us is there's another law, and that is there's a law of the harvest. There's a time for sowing and there's a time for reaping. You sow with your thoughts and your feelings. The reaping is the universe or the mechanism coming into play. Circumstances, people, conditions will come into your field of view only because you're applying this law. There's a gap in time between the thought and the manifestation, the sowing of the seed and the reaping of the harvest. And there's a reason for that. Can you imagine what the world would be like if everything we thought happened instantly? Everything we were emotional about, for instance, worry. Worry is a dress rehearsal for something you don't want to happen. How many people worry? Their kids, their money, So if what you worried about with emotion, you thought about and worried about, manifested instantly, we could not coexist. There's just no way 7 billion people could live on the same plane of existence if all of our thoughts happened instantly. So the gatekeeper of protecting this reality for everybody is this law of the harvest, or the law of gestation, otherwise called the law of gender. Baby is there's an impregnation point, and then there's the manifestation point. This is the two realities in the process of creation in terms of the physical world. So the gestation or the impregnation point of your Creation is the thought, likeness and image, the creation in your mind, what you imagine yourself to be, and then you operate as if you are that person, and you become that person. That is the faith that's necessary to walk that walk between the 2 points. I look at my wallet, well, it doesn't look much different. I look at my wallet, well, it doesn't look much different. Well, maybe there's a slight difference. Oh, there's a situation emerging. Oh, wait, things are changing. Oh, wait, guess what? So I can't keep looking at what I'm seeing as current reality. I must keep my eye on the ball, which is whatever you ask for and pray for, ask as though you have received it. This point that you have become that person is all you must hold in your mind, in your consciousness, and in your feelings, walking around with the attitude of gratitude in the gap of time between. No room for doubt. I'm running out of time. I think I'm over time. So let me just rush quickly here, the last couple of points. I had a chance to prove this point to myself. I wanted to see if this law was for real. And I was working with Bob Proctor at the time. We were in a seminar called The Science of Getting Rich. I had about 40 or 50 people in my organization there, and I was a diamond. And he asked me in front of everybody, hey, Mike, what's your goal? And it was really weird because I didn't have a goal. Here I am, a guy who used to teach everybody you have to have a goal to be successful in business, and I didn't even have my own goal set for when I was going to become a Royal Diamond. It was really odd. So he put me on the spot. He says, well, let's do it right now. So I said, okay. And I made a decision that I was going to go for Royal Diamond from the rank of Diamond. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, ask the person who invited you to this call to explain the quantum leap in going from one to the other. I mean, I needed to create 15 silvers in the 5 months that I gave myself. You'd say, well, why would you give yourself such a hard job, such a hard task? And the answer is because I really wanted to prove this point, besides the fact that I wanted to hit Royal Diamond, and I wanted to do it before the Nikan Convention in October, which was going to be held in the city of Toronto, my hometown, here in Canada. And if I could get that done for me, for my organization, for everybody, it would be such a thrill to be recognized as a new Royal Diamond here in Canada at the Nikan Convention. So it was like, man, if I'm going to prove a point, this is it. I'm going to produce 15 silvers in 5 months. So again, ask the person who invited you here how challenging that would be of any task at this stage of the game. Anybody. And not a single one of those 15 people were yet identified. So I had no clue if this was where this was going to come from. This was really a task. So Bob said and taught, as the law teaches, you have to write your goal as if it's already happened. Write it in the affirmative as if it's already happened, just like Jesus said. So on or before September 27, 1997, what you're seeing on my screen right now is my goal card, which I have somewhere here on my desk. Here it is. So this is the actual one. I'm not sure if let me just switch this camera for a second. There. So this is the goal card that you're seeing on the screen right now. This is the actual one that I carried in my pocket while I was running for Royal Diamond in 1997. So I put it in a piece of paper, put it in a plastic case, and carried it. That's what I was taught to do. The book, Think and Grow Rich, teaches a secret. The secret is if you keep it on the top of your mind and feel the feelings associated with it, eventually it must come into fruition because that's the law. So I kept it in my pocket. Every time I reached in my pocket, I would feel the card. It would trigger the memory cells in my brain about what it was that I was doing. I am thrilled and filled with the joy and satisfaction to have completed my objective of Royal Diamond. And I had my mentor sign the bottom of the card. So there it was, in writing. Remember how important are words? How do words affect reality? If they can move water, they can move mountains. So I wrote these words. However, remember, part of this equation is walking the walk in between the current reality, where I am today, and where I want to be. Now, I want to make sure I got this the same as before. I can't remember how I did it, but one of these is where I am today, and then one of this is where I want to be. So let's say it's this way. Where I am today, where I want to be. So where I am today is Diamond. Where I want to be is Royal Diamond. So there's this gap in time that I need to walk where those two realities are not the same. And what we're taught is faith is the mechanism through which we can get past that our belief system that tells us that this is too big a gap, our belief system that tells us we're not capable, our belief system that tells us all the things that why we can't or shouldn't achieve such a thing. We drop our belief system, we replace it with faith, which says there is a law that I have faith in. If I operate that law perfectly, that law will manifest as it has everything in reality. What is it that I must manifest? Or how do I behave in that law? Imagine what I want to be as if I already am. Walk in the state of grace and gratitude for having received that which I wish to perceive myself as. And in this gap of time from now until then, I just simply do the best I can with that appreciation and that understanding that the circumstances, the mechanism which is invisible to me, beyond the scope of my mind, but not beyond the scope of the mind of God, the mechanism will play itself out. My mentor would say, Mike, what's the point of worrying about this? Because you're not going to know how you get from here to there until you're here. When you're here, you can look back and say, oh, that's how it happened. So stop worrying about the mechanism. Stop worrying about how it's going to happen. Trust, have faith that it will reveal itself and you will have a historical account of what happened. So with that in mind, I started to move forward on my objective. And so living it day by day as if it was true, but I did something that I want everyone to do, and that is anchor that feeling, that emotion. I wrote on the back of my card something that would remind me to stay in the proper frame of mind and feeling and vibration, and that was faith of a mustard seed. I don't know if you can see it there, but there it is, and I'll show it to you because here it is on my card. Faith of a mustard seed. And I wrote it on the back side of this card because I wanted to remind myself. Faith. Forget about how. I don't know how. I'm not going to know how. It's just going to have to happen because I'm operating according to the law. It's going to be a mystery until it happens. So I'm not going to worry about the how. I'm going to do the best I can with what I know and keep moving forward with the understanding and expectation and gratitude that it is already done on or before September 27th. Faith of a mustard seed. So I gave myself a command and I followed it because I believed that the instructions that Jesus gave were the real thing. So I acted in accordance to that. Well, guess what, by the way? On September 26 at 6 p.m., I was standing on stage in Edison, New Jersey, in front of an audience of 5,000 people. At the back of the room was my cousin, Michelle, who was working on the last orders. And at the end of that, he ran up to the side of the stage and he did one of these. And what that meant was that he had completed his task of getting the job of platinum done. And in doing so, that resulted in me achieving the rank of Royal Diamond. And so in front of an audience of 5,000 people, 6 hours ahead of schedule of a timeline that was impossible to begin with, and I use that word impossible quite lightly, it was done. For me, I knew that I would be teaching this for the rest of my life because I experienced it as it is. And so what I'm telling you about this law that we call the law of attraction, the attraction is really the mechanism part. The intention is not the law of attraction. That's the mechanism. I want to change our wording for a second. What Jesus said is you have to think and act like you are that person, like you've already received it. So the truth is you have to assume you are that person. The law is really the law of assumption. When you assume you are that person, when you assume this is the nature of who you are, regardless of what you're currently, where you're at now, this is what you've been assuming yourself to be. Consciously, unconsciously, this is who you believe yourself to be, and this is what you're creating. You drop that reality, you pick up the new one, and you imagine yourself in an altered reality, and then you start to live as if that's the only reality. That means you assume yourself to be this person and walk with gratitude, the attitude of gratitude, knowing there is a law at work that is the nature of all reality, the creation law that created everything that there is. Let there be light, and there was light. That law is what you are utilizing to be and create the reality you want to experience. So I would leave you with this final thought. Consider every minute of every day, who are you being? Are you being the small version of yourself, somebody else's rendition of who you are or who you should be? You trying to be somebody else for somebody else? Or are you being the real you, and the real you is the one that knows you and the Father are one, and everything is possible for them who believe in their heart? What you hold and host in your consciousness, which is your thoughts and your feelings and your actions. Your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, what you host within your consciousness, within where heaven exists, you will experience so above, so below. This is what you will see in the screen of your reality, your life, and will be witnessed by others. There is a gap in time between the creation and the experience. The bigger the idea, maybe the more time involved, but faith is the only way to get from here to there. And faith is believing and trusting that there is a law at work, and not an invisible God that doesn't care about you, that would somehow condemn you because you are at fault. Really? It's time to grow up and learn the truth and teach the truth so that everybody can start to experience the life that God intended, a life of abundance. So that's what I have for you. I apologize that I've gone over. I didn't know how long it would take going through this process, and so here we are. So I'm going to just quickly unmute everybody. I'm going to stop share there for a sec. And we've got 16 people on. Boy, that's a lot more than we expected. I'm going to unmute all. So if you got some background noise, you can mute yourself or just keep it down. But I don't want to push your agenda off, as I already have, by about 15 minutes. So I apologize for that. But if some of you want to stay on and ask a question or two, I'm more than happy to entertain.
Mike, I'd like to give you some feedback from a person in my audience. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
My gal's name is Michaela, and she just said that has to be one of the best presentations I've ever seen. So I just want to give you that feedback.
Thank you. I know it's difficult for some because it does challenge beliefs, and whenever you're going to challenge beliefs, you can expect resistance. But I'm just asking you to entertain the possibility, maybe do some of your own research. But this is 25 years. This is a dedication that I've had for over 25 years now. And by the way, if there's someone you want to read, someone I absolutely can't recommend enough, it's a guy by the name of Neville. Start with this one, The Power of Awareness. Maybe you guys know Dr. Wayne Dyer, who passed away not that long ago, but the last thing that he wrote was basically a tribute to this book. And another book that I have on my desk called the I Am Discourses, but mainly this book. So Power of Awareness is such a profound way of learning some of this stuff and application. He teaches some ways to apply. Mr. Masuda, he was whispered in his ear when he was falling asleep. Most powerful time to make an impression on your mind about the reality you want to experience for yourself going forward is that time just before you fall asleep, where you're in that altered state, where your senses are quiet, you're not being bombarded by stuff that doesn't matter. What you put in your mind before you go to bed is very, very important about what's going to happen in the next day or two and going forward. So advertise to yourself. Don't be a victim of advertising. You create your own form of advertising by imagining the reality you want to experience. Do it when you're most susceptible to impressing that on the subconscious mind. And that's in that relaxed state just before you go to sleep. And fall asleep to that amazing feeling of that life being lived. And what you are actually doing is planting the seed in fertile ground. Then all you have to do is water it. Water it is act in faith. Attitude of gratitude.
Thank you, Michael.
Your tribe is present, Michael. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope this information goes with you to sprout some seeds of your own, and then you'll have your own experiences of it. Start with something small. See that it is real. I mean, when you own this because you've experienced it firsthand, oh my, then what you will do for yourself and for others will be nothing short of a miracle.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for
Thank you.